Hey, it's Eric from wanderwitheric.com. Today I'm in Danvers, Massachusetts at the Bradley Danvers apartment complex, formerly known as the Danvers State Hospital. This place was a groundbreaking hospital when it first came out in the 1800s and has quite an interesting history. So we're going to take a walk around the outside grounds, see what we can see, and I'll try to intersperse some pictures and things of the history of the building, and we'll talk about some of the things that happened here and why this place is interesting and notable. As usual, if you like what you see in today's video, please click the like button. Please subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell to get notified whenever I post something new. Share it with all your friends. Leave a comment down below with all your thoughts. I like getting your feedback. And now that that's all out of the way, let's go wander around and see what we can see. Looks like the house out of The Haunting.
In the 1840s, reformer Dorothea Dix campaigned throughout the United States advocating for more humane treatment for the mentally ill, particularly the creation of asylums, a word that did not then carry the connotation it does today. These facilities, in Dix's view, were places where those suffering mental illnesses would be safe and properly cared for. In 1845, Dix successfully caused the state of New Jersey to authorize the creation of such a facility. The facility that would become the New Jersey State Lunatic Asylum, now the Trenton Psychiatric Hospital, was designed under a plan devised by psychiatrist Thomas Story Kirkbride. By 1910, over 70 structures were created according to Kirkbride's plan, including the State Lunatic Asylum at Danvers. In an industrializing age of great change, Kirkbride believed that much mental illness could be reduced or cured by giving the patients a safe, serene place away from the hustle and bustle of society, well lit with sunshine and well ventilated with fresh air, and with well-adorned and manicured grounds surrounding it. The building itself was to be constructed around a central hub with two staggered branches of several wards each coming off each side in a distinctive batwing fashion, one for male and the other for female patients. Each ward was staggered behind the one before it such that each end was open to provide additional sunlight and fresh air. The outer wards were reserved for the most violent or dangerous patients. The State Lunatic Asylum at Danvers, later known as the Danvers State Hospital, began construction in 1874 under architect Nathaniel Jeremiah Bradley, who designed it in an imposing neo-Gothic style. The location at Hathorne Hill, once the home of the Judge John Hathorne who presided over the Salem witch trials, was quite rural at the time and featured views all the way to Boston, 18 miles to the south. The construction finished in May 1878 and housed its first patients that same month. It ended up costing around $1.5 million, a staggering sum at the time. That's probably somewhere around $50 million in today's money. To allow freedom of movement between buildings in the wintertime, an extensive tunnel network honeycombed the hilltop beneath the hospital. The facility started out with the best intentions, with a maximum capacity of about 450 patients. Danvers was the first mental hospital in Massachusetts to employ a female nurse in 1879. Occupational therapy employed patients to work in and around the buildings in various capacities. The hospital also pioneered the use of hydrotherapy. Other positive developments included a training program for nurses introduced in 1889 and an 1895 pathological research laboratory. The use of mechanical restraints was discontinued in the 1890s. School programs in the local area aimed to identify the onset of mental illness in children, one part of a larger effort to foster mental health throughout the community. However, not everything was rosy at the state hospital. As early as the 1880s, overcrowding had become a problem. This issue would reach its peak in the 1930s under Superintendent Dr. Clarence Bonner. In a facility originally designed to house 450 patients, the population had swollen to over 2,000, with patients purportedly being housed in attics and basements. With huge overcrowding and a chronic lack of funding, the hospital resorted to more and more drastic treatments, including the use of straitjackets, insulin shock therapy, electroshock therapy, and even lobotomy. Fortunately, due to the introduction of better psychiatric medications like Thorazine in the 1950s and 60s, efforts to deinstitutionalize patients, and the introduction of community mental health centers, the population of the hospital began to decline. Unfortunately, so did the funding, causing conditions to worsen further for the remaining patients. During the 1970s, the building itself began to fall apart, causing the closure of entire wards and the transference of many patients to other facilities throughout the Commonwealth. Increasing scrutiny during the 1980s questioned the need for the facility at all, and it transferred out its last patients and closed for good in 1992. For the next 13 years, Danvers State Hospital sat abandoned, closed to all but thrill seekers who dared to trespass inside for a look around the storied and supposedly haunted structure. You can get a glimpse inside the abandoned hospital by watching the 2001 horror film Session 9, which was filmed inside. The exterior of the hospital also featured in 2004 video game Painkiller. Literary historians believe Danvers State Hospital may have been the inspiration for the fictional Arkham Sanitarium, which appears in the works of horror author H.P. Lovecraft. In turn, this inspired Arkham Asylum in the DC Comics universe, which features prominently in Batman stories. In 2005, work began to convert the facility into an apartment complex, which eventually resulted in the demolition of all but the central administration building, which had its interior completely replaced, resulting in the preservation of only the exterior facade. An unfortunate end for such a grand structure, but on the other hand, at least they were able to preserve something. Today, the Bradley Danvers apartment complex occupies the site of the former Danvers State Hospital. The staff I spoke with inside were friendly and accommodating, and from what I saw, the place looks to be a pretty nice place to live, as long as you're not superstitious about the site's history. The staff also informed me of a path leading down to a cemetery where many former patients of the hospital now rest. Along the way, I discovered this interpretive center with information about the history of the structure. The cemetery itself is tucked away in a quiet little corner. Being there felt pretty heavy, knowing that many of the people buried here probably faced very troubled lives. Not all the graves have their own individual markers, but thankfully a nice modern marker has been erected to the memory of all who were laid to rest here. After soaking in the heavy history of the Danvers State Hospital, I planned to motor over to neighboring Salem to take in their annual Haunted Happenings, a festival that takes place all October long in the Witch City, this year celebrating its 40th year running. Unfortunately, I quickly learned that filming in a very crowded environment presents a lot of challenges. While I originally planned to make a whole separate video about this, I didn't end up with enough material, so instead I'm tacking it on to the end of this video as some bonus content. While there is a lot of history here, it's also a huge tourist trap. that's not all bad. For example, this place, Count Orlok's Nightmare Gallery, is an excellent museum dedicated to movie monsters. I make a pilgrimage here every time I'm in town.
As usual, I hope you enjoyed wandering with Eric today. I hope you'll wander with me again next time. In the meantime, don't forget to keep exploring.